So today we are going to be talking to you about how to present and how to presentation. And I'm Paige Yoder.
I'm Braden Moore.
I'm Wildline Hyam.
And I'm Kendall Davis. So in a world that is always developing new things, being able to teach people how to do things is crucial. At some point in your life, you're going to have to learn how to do a how-to presentation. You're going to have to give one to someone, whether it be formal or informal. So an informal example would be like teaching your husband how to change your baby's diaper. And a formal one would be like in the workplace, telling how to use a type of machinery or something. So today we're going to be talking to you about what how-to presentations are, different types of how-to presentations, tips for giving them, and how to prepare your own how-to presentation.
So, how to perform how-to presentations. You really want to help the people you're talking to, your audience, learn to perform this task. So, whether it's changing a baby's diaper or it's teaching them advanced accounting programming software. With this, it's one of the most difficult things to do because you really need to know your audience and know that everything that you need to encompass inside your presentation so that they fully understand how to do this new task or new software. Going back to this, you really just need to know your audience, whether accountants or mothers-to-be or whoever. So there's different types of procedural communications. There's the product demonstration, which really is physically showing them how to do something. Like if you are a server, you want to teach new servers how to serve. So you're physically showing them, hey, this is how you greet your table, this is how you take their order, and all of this other stuff. And then there's the training procedural, which is the most common. You're really just showing them how to do this. Like you're sitting here with a production and showing them how. And then there's procedural, which is just giving them a general idea, just kind of standing up here and talking to them about whatever the task is. And then you want to really know your audience. I know I've said it these past few times, but it's one of the best things that's going to help you with your presentation is knowing who you are talking to. And you always want to later on interview just a random few to see how they're doing with the software and what you should later on include in your new presentations about how to use this new task. So, because it really just helps you encompass everything when you know what people are struggling with. Some advice for making how-to presentations. You always want to have a very strong introduction, grab their attention, because if you have a boring presentation, kind of like this, you really just want to encompass them and have them drawn in to be like, hey, I want to learn how to do a how-to presentation now. You want to have worksheets so they can follow along, take notes, and if you take those up later on, you can really see what people didn't understand maybe, or see what really hit home with them. And this is with anything with little kids. If you're a teacher, you can do math assignments and you can see what child is struggling with, this new addition problem. And you can, have a one-on-one with them or have a one-on-one with a select few to really help them further along with it. And that goes with older students, like college students, whether they understand, that new chemistry stuff or anything. It just really helps you know how your audience is reflecting off of your presentation.
Because if you think about teaching is actually teaching you how to do this. So if you're teaching a student how to do multiplication, a worksheet will help you get the feedback to know if they're actually getting your presentation and knowing what you're saying.
It'll allow you time to go back and one-on-one with that student so that they get what they need, and so that later on they'll remember how to do that. Organizing a how-to presentation, you're going to be sure that you follow it in chronological order. All your points should be one after the other. Your pattern that you select should follow throughout the whole presentation, whether you use numerical form or alphabetical form. And also, like they said, knowing your audience is super important. If you're speaking to kids, you don't want to speak to them in adult language. And if you're speaking to adults, you don't want to talk to them in children language. You want to be sure that they are not being persuaded that they're dumb. So be aware of how much time you have. be sure that if you have 15 minutes, that you keep it to 15 minutes, maybe a little less, so that you can ask questions when you're done, and don't go over, because nobody wants to stay longer than they have to.
Very true. And going back to it, if a grown-up feels like they're being baby, they're going to pay less attention. Like, oh, this person does not respect me, I'm not going to listen to what they have to say. And so it's just really important to really know your audience, like who you're talking to.
Presenting a how-to presentation, use proper action verbs. Be consistent with your action verbs. So if you use gently place this object here, don't use later on put this object here. And also don't overload your audience, because as I know from a college student, if I get overloaded, I'm just not going to do anything. I'm just going to sit there and stare at you blankly. And worksheets work well as a visual aid. So if you give them a lecture layout, they'll be able to take notes on it and keep up with you. Practice also makes perfect. So when practicing, if you are going to present to college students, say you have a couple college friends, you want to maybe practice in front of them so that you have a feel of how they're going to take it. And so
practicing in front of an audience that's going to be similar to the one that you're actually going to be presenting in front of can be super helpful, because you become more comfortable with them. So if you're presenting to adults, practice in front of adults. If you're presenting to little kids, like try and find some little kids to practice in front of, so you just like are really comfortable with that age group or that type of people. Yeah.
Content that you're presenting.
And then going back to the worksheets, I know when I have a worksheet present in front of me, like it's a follow along, like in our CFS class, our teacher always just gives us a kind of guided worksheet, and so we follow along with her. But I know if she was just to stand up there and just to talk, I would be on my phone, I would not pay attention, and I'd probably fall asleep.
Okay, during a how-to presentation, give yourself plenty of time for any failures. Usually a how-to presentation is between 10 and 12 minutes, so don't cut yourself short or go over the time limit, and give ample time for feedback. For example, your audience, for questions, and make sure that they have a clear understanding of the topic. During your audience, you should know your audience, and make the topic, make sure that your idea connects with their idea so you don't seem boring, and make sure that your outline is important to the audience. Then again, so they don't get bored.
Scheme. So different types of scheme are numbered lists, which I talked about earlier, is 1, 2, 3. You have a description where you will say, put a hard drive into this computer, and then this will happen. Then you have an action response discussion, which is also similar to description. And then you have a question list. So if you say, do you have a Mac? If so, do this.
So presentations in your profession, depending on what profession you're in, you're going to have different how-to presentations. So if you're a teacher, you're going to present on how to do multiplication. If you are selling software, you're going to present on how to use this software, and things like that. And we keep hitting on it, but you just really need to know your audience. I know that's super repetitive, but it's so important in how you communicate about your object or software or whatever. You need to know where to seek help in your profession. So if you are working for a corporate company, they often have people who can give you advice on how to give presentations, or even just talking to a peer about how can I make this information more appealing to other people. And even just like practicing in front of coworkers who are knowledgeable about the same thing. They're also, in some places, they have certain people who give presentations, so it may not even be you who is giving the presentation, but you do need to like give them the right information so that they can communicate what you need communicated to someone.
Like she said, when you're talking with your peers, like in my high school, I had 2 to 3 math teachers, and I bet they would feed off of each other and say, hey, this man or this student didn't learn this. How did you help him last semester or last year?
And it really just goes back into knowing who you are teaching and who you are doing this how-to task for.
So if you're working with colleagues in a team setting on a certain type of information that you're going to present how to do it, how to work this machinery, how to operate this software, whatever, you're going to like contribute your knowledge collectively, and then you're going to choose one or two people to actually present your presentation on how to use it. And so you want to pick strong presenters from that group, and just really keep track of who knows what knowledge and who can help you out if you're struggling with how to better communicate that. Presentations and international communication. So you'll often run into when you're presenting things that there will be different people in the audience who speak different languages, and a lot of times there is a translator there for them if they're attending that how-to presentation. So you want to consider their language and consider how that will translate. So if you look at instructions for how to operate a computer, if you look at the instructions that are in Spanish and the instructions that are in English, the amount of words is a lot less than the ones for English than for Spanish. Just being aware of that and knowing that if you're giving a presentation and you have one slide and you read that it may translate a lot shorter for the people who speak Spanish, and so they're going to be sitting there absent for like 30 seconds till you finish communicating to the rest of the audience. So you just want to be aware of that and make sure you take that into consideration when you're considering what you're going to say and to who you're speaking to.
Also with that, I've learned since being in college that body gestures for other cultures are a little different than body gestures here in America. So body gestures is super important when presenting. You don't want to offend any of your audiences.
So in this chapter, Kevin Canary talks about his experience with his presentations in his profession, and he gives tips for how to better your presentations. So some of the advice he gives is to have a grid format and follow that format so you don't get lost and you know what you're communicating, and just don't get lost in your presentation and forget things. And because if you're telling them how to do a task, you don't want to forget an important step that will get them completely lost and not know how to do it at all. He also really stressed purpose. Know what the purpose of your presentation is. So like if you're talking about how to use a Mac, don't beat around the bush and mention a lot of other computers when talking about it, because it just really takes away from the presentation and they don't really gain anything from it. So just knowing your purpose and knowing if this presentation is formal or informal is really important. So if you're in a work setting, that would be an example of formal. So you want to be really professional, probably dress in professional clothes, and make sure you use the right language when speaking. Don't be casual and laid back. Just be really professional, as most people know how to be. And informal would be like a TED Talk on how to change a diaper, something like that. Or even just talking to someone else about how to change a diaper would be informal. And just knowing the purpose and if it's going to be formal or informal is just really important, because it changes the whole way you do your presentation.
And it changes how your audience will look at you. If you are performing a formal presentation and you do it pretty informal, they're going to not take you as seriously as it would be if you stood up here and did a very formal presentation.
He also mentioned that presentation software can be really helpful. So our PowerPoint can be super helpful because y'all get to follow along and see how to do a how-to presentation, and y'all can see our points and not get lost and know what's coming next. And also, even not necessarily software, but just back to the worksheets can be super helpful because it keeps the listeners engaged. He also said audience and purpose shape the content and type of every presentation.
Okay, during this how-to presentation, we taught y'all how to do an actual presentation, the different types, and tips for efficiency. And we also taught y'all how to form your own how-to presentation. Thanks for watching.